Coming up on this week's show.
We have an exclusive interview with our special guest and co-sponsor Terri Morgan about LumaFusion and its latest release, along with a few sneak peeks at future updates.
And I'll be chatting to husband and wife team Fizah Tahir and Nassr Adris about their IGTV cookery show, Fizah's Bangin Recipes, which is all shot on mobile.
All that and more on this week's Mobile Creator Podcast. Welcome to this week's Mobile Creator Podcast, Episode 3. This week, we have a very special guest here to talk about the latest updates to LumaFusion.
Now, very few companies can claim to have had an impact on mobile content creation to quite the extent that LumaTouch has. LumaFusion is probably the most powerful mobile-class video editing application on the market, and we're absolutely delighted to be joined by co-founder Terri Morgan. Terri, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, as well as can be expected at this point in our little COVID world.
It certainly has been challenging times, I think, for everybody around the place. But nonetheless, the team is still beavering away in Seattle, I presume, working from home in all sorts of fun and frolicky ways.
Yeah, so we have our Seattle team working here. And of course, the developers are all in Salt Lake. So we're business as usual because we were working in offices, but we all had setups at home. So it was just a matter of not coming into work, which was actually, pretty disturbing not to come in and hang out with our colleagues because we have a lot of fun usually. So we've had to kind of make some special meetings where we don't talk about work and just kind of hang out and answer silly questions and stuff. That's helped.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So, I mean, you've still, as you say, you've been working away and literally probably when people are listening to the podcast, you've just dropped an update for LumaFusion. We want to get into some of the little bit of nitty gritty on it, but is it out today? Am I right in saying that?
Well, we submitted on Wednesday, so it should be out either today or Monday. So just check the App Store for an update or, it's 2.3 and it's really awesome.
Okay, we'll get into the details of that in a second, but I want to also just talk a tiny bit about the new keyboard skin that you brought out very, very recently. Yeah. I mean, I was scouring back through social media and in the tweets, certainly in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I think it was kind of one of the topics that was being pushed. So it brings keyboard shortcuts and basically, the layout has changed a little bit. Do you want to talk to us a bit about what's coming?
So over the 3 years of LumaFusion, we had been adding keyboard shortcuts, but we hadn't really organized them in a way that could be laid out graphically. So we reorganized them and really put a lot of thought into it so that it could be added to the skin. And the skin is all color-coded, so you know when to hit Option or Command or Shift. And it lays right on your smart keyboard for the iPad Pro 12.9 or 11 or 10.5. And there's also iPad Air and iPad 7th generation that it would work on. So anything with a smart keyboard for those would work with the skin, and it's really fun to use. It really makes keyboard shortcuts more accessible.
Very nice, great. So coming in the release as of today, what are the key features? I think, Courtney, you're on the beta list, aren't you? You've had a chance to play with it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I mean, the all of the multi-select and then also some of the Frame IO integration. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So multi-select allows you to select, multiple clips on your timeline, and you can do that via like a lasso. You can lasso them, you can mark it in and out, or you can just hand select the clips. And then once you have that range, you can do a number of things. You could copy that and paste it in the same timeline, or copy and paste it in another timeline. Or you could delete the range. You can pick it up and move it somewhere else. So it's really it takes a professional editor to the place they want to be when they're editing on LumaFusion. It gives you that extra control. And I think it really changes the game for LumaFusion.
It does. It has for me so far, because I've been able to take footage that I've shot on my phone, send it up to Frame.io, bring it into something like After Effects, and then, affect something in After Effects, make a change or do a visual effect on a clip, and then bring that clip directly back into the timeline in LumaFusion, and it's fantastic and seamless, easy.
Yeah, that's so you're speaking of the Frame.io integration, and that's also, we did a really good integration. So, you could do a really simple integration where, okay, you just see the Frame.io media and the comments and have a little separate window for that or something. But we did a very tight integration. So you can see your Frame.io media with its comments. You can respond to those comments, and that'll get right up to Frame.io. You can make a timeline, put new comments on that, and then put that on Frame.io and have responses come back to your timeline from your producer or whatever. But one of the key things that makes this really useful is if you're using ProRes or a resolution that's not supported by iOS, Frame.io automatically generates high-res proxies for you. So in LumaFusion, we just see your media, and it could be ProRes. And then you can edit in LumaFusion as normal, export to XML for Final Cut. And in that stage, you just say, I don't include any relinkable media, which includes Frame.io media. It includes media you imported directly from Dropbox or another place. And then in Final Cut, you just open the edit. It looks all the same, except that media is missing. And you just say, relink the media. Actually, in Dropbox, if you use Dropbox media, it automatically relinks because it's the same path, as long as Dropbox is connected to your desktop. But for Frame.io, it relinks to the ProRes. So now you have a ProRes version. So it's a whole circle now that allows you to edit with ProRes on LumaFusion.
That's phenomenal. For the uninitiated who perhaps haven't heard of Frame.io, can I just play devil's advocate and say, so Frame.io is ultimately a cloud-based collaboration tool that basically allows people to markups and collaborate in projects. Would that be a reasonable description?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty advanced one. So it, in addition to just allowing you to mark up things, it creates proxies for various places. So.
And is it like the XML export for Final Cut Pro? Is it an in-app purchase, or do you just need to have a Frame.io account, or how does that work?
You just have to have a Frame.io account, and then you log in LumaFusion, and we've made the feature free. I mean, we considered charging for it, and we felt like now is not the time to be charging for the work we've been doing. I mean, we have spent really a year working on that and other things, and we just felt like, you know what, this needs to be a free release, and so everything in it is free. The multi-select, copy and paste, Frame.io. So.
Wow. I will say that the multi-select and copy paste is going to make life for the podcast so much easier.
Yeah.
Because we often go off and do our own thing for our interviews, and then kind of have to bring it all together in a project. And bringing bits around can be a little bit challenging.
You'll be able to cut out my mistakes in bulk. So.
It's usually me over talking, Terri. It's usually me over talking. Courtney, you were talking to me earlier on about the recent Apple developer conference online and some of the announcements that they made. I think that was something that we wanted to gently tease Terri about and just kind of get her thoughts on it. Is there anything in specific you want to dive into?
Well, I think it's very interesting because I think it opens up, the new ARM architecture that Apple is coming out with and switching over to, getting away from the Intel-based processors that they've been using for the last several years. But this kind of opens up different hardware for LumaFusion to actually work on, which is, I think, spectacular. So, imagine being able to use LumaFusion on an iMac, I think that's a pretty interesting prospect, don't you, Terri?
Well, I do think it's interesting. But let me say, so LumaFusion's always been created, the whole engine for LumaFusion is created that it could run on OS X. So It's not that we couldn't have done it before. And in fact, I guess about a year ago, we were thinking we were going to do it anyway, regardless of what Apple did. And then
Interesting.
I kind of said, wait a minute here. What's our mission as a company? And our mission is to create the best mobile editing software there is. And I think we're doing really good at that mission. So I started to question whether because you can is the right reason to do something. So now it's not only because you can, it's because people are going to expect us to. So I have to rethink that. I mean, we're basically maybe forced to go that route because people demand it. But I still think it's not a technical question. It's a UI question. So LumaFusion is fun to use and really functional and brings a whole new paradigm to editing that makes, for the first time in 20 years, editing really fun again. It just has gotten so complex in these big desktop systems. And so when I think about moving LumaFusion to desktop, I'm thinking, well, first of all, one of the things that makes LumaFusion fun is its touch. To reach in there and twist your picture, trim with your finger, or, move things around with your finger. This is a direct relationship to your media. We're going to lose that. The second thing that makes it really fun is that the whole interface is transparent. So there's not hidden menus. There's a few things in the settings that we couldn't get away from. They're too complex to have, but not a lot. So it'd take you 5 minutes to look through the settings and you can probably remember everything that's in there. But once you go to desktop, and even probably now on iOS, there's going to be context menus, and context menus are the devil for usability. Like, once you have a list of 40 things and you don't know what 30 of them are, that makes editing a chore. You're just like, well, maybe I should get someone else to do this. This is getting it's too much work. So yeah, to say you can and then jump to you should is a big, big, big jump for me. So it's really something we have to think hard about.
Right. Yeah. I do say that this app in particular is best suited for touching and using the pencil, and pinching and zooming, all in your hand, because I do use the Magic Keyboard and the touchpad on the Magic Keyboard, and it's nice, and I use it for mostly for scrubbing, I guess, things like that. But I don't really use it for what you would use a trackpad or a mouse like in some of the other software out there. So I love the fact, it was just the reason why I contacted you guys in the first place, is because I literally, the first time I used it in a project, I was walking around the house and the backyard with my Apple Pencil, just scrubbing and cutting and editing. And it was literally the most fun editing I'd ever had. Well, since the first time I probably used another software like Premiere or something, but this was a revelation to me, and I hope that we can keep it that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's my experience too. I've been editing, I think, since 1988, and I was so in love with editing, like right from the start. It was my thing. I knew I wanted to do it. I enjoyed it. And then I did it for, I don't know how many years that is in between now and then, but a lot of years. And in those years, it became, okay, this is these are 15-hour days sitting in a chair doing something that's taxing. It can be fun, but it's taxing. And then we came out with LumaFusion, and like, I remember that feeling. It can be fun, and it is fun. So yeah, I really don't want to destroy that, but the world changes, and sometimes you got to change with it. So,
as a matter of fact, you actually kind of touched on something that I want to dive into. Why did you start, and how did you start LumaFusion? I don't know the story about that.
Oh, Well, like I said, I've been editing since 1988, and then I had my own little company and freelance editing and so on. And on the side, I was working for companies like Fast Multimedia. I worked for Lightworks way back in 1995. Tektronix, and Pinnacle Systems, and then Avid. So I've been around the block, so to speak. And at Avid, I think actually at Pinnacle Systems, I met Chris Damaris. And boy, the first time I met him, I just knew he was like a stellar person in general. I just felt it right away. And he proved himself to be also a stellar developer. And so we ended up on a team together making Avid Studio for iPad for Avid. And they put us in a team of, I think we had 8 people. And boy, that team was just the best team. I mean, we just glued together and we were like clockwork working on this app. So we got Avid Studio for iPad out in, I think we had 6 months to do it. And it was huge fun. And then the whole, not corporate, but the whole consumer division was sold to Corel. And at that point, Corel was going to let us all go. And so Chris and I said, we kind of like this software we made. So instead of just closing that software down, why don't you just let us develop it and support it for a while on a license? And they were really great. Actually, Corel was great with us. They just said, sure, why not? So we split the proceeds and did that for a few years, and then eventually told them, we wanted to make our own version. We actually asked them if they wanted to be involved, and they were set with what they got. So we said, okay, we're doing it. We went and made LumaFusion, and that took 3 years. So, and we put it out end of 2016. And since then, so we've grown. It was Andrew, Morgan, Chris Damaris, and I that got the first release out. And then since then, I think we have 14 people now that are working on LumaFusion and LumaFX and other things.
Very good. Well, talking about the team, obviously I know you don't want to betray, any giveaways for what might be coming down the tracks, but clearly if you've just launched a release, that means all the energy goes into what's next. So what is next? Is there anything you can tell us? Any secrets we can share?
Yeah, I have some secrets I can share and some I can't because they're just too big. But the things, so the whole team, has jobs to do. They have a feature that they own or whatever. And so some of the features that people are moving on to as soon as this one's that is coming out today or Monday is out is subtitles. And that would be first importing an SRT file and getting that to show up in your titler in a template. And then eventually, it'll be in phases. So that first is the import of the SRT file, and then it'll be the voice to text. And eventually the third phase would be being able to translate that through some service. I don't have the details of that, but that'll mean, you can do your subtitles right in LumaFusion, and that'll be really cool. So that's one thing.
Amazing.
That's one thing. That's huge.
And I don't have personally, well, I guess we do subtitle our tutorials, but the thing I'm more excited about, even though it's smaller, is keyframe easing. So to get your motion to ease in and out and
Yay.
And then moving the keyframe left and right. So, oh my gosh, I spend so much time making my own easing. Every time I move something to a stop, I'm like, it can't just stop. It has to slow down. And so I have this whole calculation where I add little pixels, more and more and more. And so it slows down. So I'm not going to have to do that anymore. And I'm really excited about that.
And does that include
and then,
speed ramping?
Speed ramping is a whole barrel of monkeys because we are using Apple's speed engine, which can go 6x. and it can't do. So in order to do a proper speed ramping, we're going to have to rewrite this whole speed engine on our own, and then make the UI and make all the things. It's like coming to a stoplight that's turning yellow. When you change the speed of something, there's a lot of calculations that have to go on, especially if you end up without enough media because you went too fast. So that is not going to come soon, but it is on our list. It's just people think, why can't you just do it? Come on, it's a line. Make it go up or down. It's like, it's not like that. So, but anyway, then the audio effects engine is being remade by a gentleman also named Andrew. And we just brought him on the team in the last few months. So he's working on rewriting the whole audio engine. And then there's going to be hopefully new UIs for all those audio effects, like and EQ and stuff like that. So that's really exciting because I think it's a place where LumaFusion could really be a lot better than it is.
Well, certainly, I will tell you first-hand feedback right now. So, because we cut the podcast basically in LumaFusion, obviously, on an iPad Pro, for the record. Even though I personally use LumaFusion on my phone more than on the iPad, but for the podcast, we use the iPad. But yeah, I mean, the audio stuff, yeah, just being able to scale the view basically of the audio would be huge for me. I will say that the ease in, ease out is probably the single most requested feature that I get asked when I do training courses. Can you do this? So that's really going to be an absolute gift to know that that's coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, really interesting on the audio stuff, actually. Yeah, because there's definitely, I mean, for the podcasting market, which is, I think, mushroomed over the last 2 years, I think a lot more people would be enthused about basically doing both the audio and the video editing, specifically basically within the app, as you can do the audio export.
Right.
So,
and be able to
and now you can do
some motion graphics,
right,
with the easing. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And now you can do 12 tracks of audio. Did you know you can put audio on your video tracks as well instead of video? So it is powerful for what most people would need for, podcasts or YouTube things, or even most videos, to be honest, don't need more than 12 tracks. Not all, but most. Yeah. So,
but, I mean, the beauty of it is, I mean, for a lot of the type of market that I personally train, which would be mainly journalists and kind of social media people, like there's an abundant amount of tracks for the type of projects that do, even with graphic overlays. To be fair. Yeah.
Well, but coming from a filmmaker's perspective, the more tracks I have, the better, because I have my dialogue pass, but then I have my sound effects pass, and then I have my music pass, so I need, every track that you can give me.
I know. I mean, oh my gosh. When we went to the Final Cut Pro Summit last year, there was a speaker there that was showing his professional film timeline in Final Cut, and oh my gosh, there I think there was probably 100 and something audio tracks with different effects and grouped in different roles, and it was pretty fantastic. It boggled my mind. I was like, I don't want to do. Better him than me. Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'm really, really looking forward to the community's response to the updates. I mean, it sounds phenomenal, and also what's on the roadmap sounds really, really bloody impressive as well. I know I'm not asking you to commit to this, but even ballpark time frame, are we looking at 6 months out, 12 months out? Any idea?
Staggered. So, I mean, my plan, and best laid plans, but my plan is to get out the easier things in smaller releases, so that we're not waiting for such a long time between releases. So, and frankly, the easiest thing will probably be the keyframe easing and moving, so that I would expect to be one of the first things out. And then we have a really big thing that we're all working on.
Which is
but I can't let that out of the bag yet. So.
Talk about giving the baby the candy and then just taking it away.
Right. It feels so evil, and I love it.
Well, Terri, it's always a pleasure to chat to you. Thanks so much for sharing the insights. I think it's really, really valuable, particularly for our audience. Can I also say, because we had a chat about you on the podcast last week as well, thank you for making this possible as well.
Oh, my pleasure. You guys
are for supporting
the best.
supporting this. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, Courtney, he lives near Seattle, so we've met up, and the first time we met, we're like, we're gonna work together somehow. We knew that, but and Glen, of course, I love you.
Oh, thanks. Good luck with everything, and sure, we'll hopefully catch up with you again really, really soon.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Take care, Terri. Bye. Well, in previous shows, we've talked a lot about how smartphones are making an impact within the indie movie making business. But obviously, there are huge potentials in actually using smartphones to create really, really great content for social media platforms, particularly video. So joining me now is a husband and wife team who really have been carving it up in every sense of the word. They've got a series on Instagram, and it really is something well worth seeing. I mean, the production qualities are off the charts. I'd like to welcome Fizah, Tahir, and Nassr Adris. Can I just ask, let's bring us back to the beginning of the story. Tell me a little bit about how the two of you guys met.
We met in like 2013, and we were both at university at the time, and we started basically working on a few projects together, but we didn't have a camera, and we decided, I've just bought a new phone. It was a Galaxy S4, the Samsung Galaxy S4 at the time, and I remember just telling her, we can film stuff on this. We can film a documentary on this, if we have to. And she was laughing at me. She's like, no way that's going to happen.
Because at that time, so you forgot to mention, we were both studying journalism, but at two different universities. So the modules were a bit different. And Mojo wasn't a thing then. I think it just started to come through a little. So that's when you suggested, let's just film something on a smartphone to be innovative as well.
Yeah. And it was a kind of only source of tech that we had. So we kind of innovated. We improvised with the equipment that we had, and we were shooting short news packages. I remember I shot Fizah. She did like a few pieces of cameras and a small news package about the Conservative conference in Manchester.
At the GMX Centre, and it was
there was protests and everything because
it was a massive protest
because the party's obviously controversial. And I remember getting some really cool shots, and I think was it after that we decided, I kind of proved to her that it works.
Like he said, I initially laughed at the matter that he wanted to actually film a news package using a mobile phone, not knowing that a few years later that would be the main camera that we use for most of our projects.
Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
I mean, the only bad thing about shooting on a smartphone is just the sound, right?
Yeah.
But the sound, I think, we've kind of come a long way, and you can get smartphone microphones as well. But I mean, I shoot the cooking show, which is called Fizah's Bangin Recipes, by the way.
Bangin Recipes, okay.
Yeah.
Fizah's Bangin Recipes.
Because it's all of her personal recipes.
Okay, so the two of you met in college. We've established that. Both of you are studying journalism. You basically put the idea forward, Nassr, about the idea of shooting on the phone. Can I just ask, you mentioned audio was a challenge back then, because I would have been experimenting with stuff around the same time. I think that was when I did the first course in Al Jazeera, believe it or not. What I'm interested in is, were you just using the phone as a camera, or were you doing the whole production for the news packages on the camera? Were you shooting and editing on the Samsung?
We weren't editing on the Samsung. We shot on the Samsung, but there was no external gear. We kind of just
just use a tripod.
We use a small tripod. I think I bought a monopod back then, just for more stable shots.
Mm-hmm.
And we edited on Adobe Premiere Pro just because we were quite pro at editing at that point, so didn't want to really edit on mobile phones, simply because it's better for us anyway to be editing on bigger screens and monitors.
Sure.
But if we had to, and that was the only way we could edit, we would definitely be using editing apps and services on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, the editing apps on mobile phones now are pretty great.
Pretty
like
good,
they're so powerful in what you can do on a phone.
But we didn't really have that at that time, right?
No, we didn't really have that at that time. So we edited on CS6, Premiere CS6.
Oh, yeah.
It was like an all localized version before the whole cloud service that Adobe started. And I mean, it was really great. It was a great time of experimentation. We were getting pretty creative with the stuff that we were making.
Actually, that news package, that first one that we filmed, because I was still at university, I think I submitted it for something at university, and the TV lecturer really liked it, and then my news package became like the model example of Mojo that year in the actually that semester at the university. So it was used as an example for different classes of how it worked, because we weren't really taught Mojo then. I think it's probably taught now at universities, but that time, because it was so new, it was just something that we decided to do, and then the lecturer was like, oh, okay, this is quite a good idea, let's just embed it into the module.
What do you think between then and now was the most ambitious project that you tried before the series on Instagram?
On mobile phone?
Yeah.
So we went to South Africa, and
a year later, so that was 2014.
And we shot a 20 to 25 minute doc. I think it's about 23 minutes.
Yeah.
About a 23-minute documentary, a short doc on it was called Sufi Surfers, and the name is obviously derives from a Sufi community in South Africa who happen to be surfers. So
in 2013 we filmed a 2-minute news package. And a year later, we ended up filming a 20-minute short film on mobile phones, on mobile phones.
That's impressive.
GoPro, because it was about surfing. We didn't want to put our phones in the water. They weren't.
Water, yes, sure.
They weren't waterproof at that time.
Yeah, we bought a GoPro, and the documentary was about a Sufi community. It's a Muslim community in South Africa, who are highly spiritual, but they also connect their spirituality to surfing, which was super amazing. We actually took it to a film festival in Paris. Was it the following year? Was it 2014?
I think it was the following year, the same year. It was taken to a Paris film festival called Mokhtar Awards, and it was actually showcased there, and it got into the top 5 as well. It was didn't win, should have won, deserved to win, but it didn't. It was in the top 5 though.
That's excellent. Really, really good work. And I mean, has mobile, so you talked, Nassr, at the start about this idea that part of it was innovation, but part of it was out of necessity. And that's a theme that comes up regularly with a lot of the indie filmmakers I speak to. They're kind of like, well, I shoot in the phone because I have it. And so as you progressed in both of your careers, clearly you would have had access to better gear. I mean, if you're aware of what phones could do in 2013, you must have been intimately aware of what DSLRs were doing. So why did you stick with mobile, and why, for instance, when you chose to actually do the series for Instagram, did you decide to go with mobile?
So, I mean, there's one saying that I've come across a few times, which is, the best camera is the one on you, right? Mm-hmm. So I must have heard that a million times. So the best camera is always, the one in your pocket. And if you've not got a big luggy DSLR or, a C300 or a C100 or an FS7 or something like that, I mean, it takes a lot of extra effort filming on them, right? Mm-hmm. But with the phone, you can kind of stick it out. You can get it out of your pocket. You can just point it in people's faces, and they're not really bothered because they're used to it, right? Mm. So, I think that would always win on a run and gun type of job. So
that's not to say that we only stuck with filming on mobile phones. As we progressed in our careers, we actually did film on a DSLR until this year.
Yeah, my personal DSLR broke. But we have, I've shot on, I used to work for the BBC. I've shot on C300s. I've shot on all those cameras that we talked about before. And they are amazing cameras. But I don't know, I think just the what's the word?
I think when we're, because I was at ITV News before I joined Al Jazeera, and of course then we were using broadcast equipment from ITV News. So then, whilst we were on, TV broadcast, we then used broadcast cameras. But then I think it's only with personal projects we, because we had fiddled around with it in 2013, we always knew that we could just always use our camera. So it was always a backup as well. But with this Fizah's Bangin recipes, we actually started piloting, so practicing with the filming, I think almost a year ago now.
Wow.
And we were using the DSLR then, right?
Yeah, we were using the DSLR.
So it was planned to shoot the series on a DSLR, not a smartphone. But we went on holiday this year in January to Kenya. We took the DSLR and we were doing some awesome shots in the safari, and then the camera just stopped working. So when we came back, we were like, oh, shoot, how are we now going to film the series? Because then the whole lockdown happened, so we can't go out and get a new camera or get it fixed. So then Nassr said, well, why don't we just use a smartphone like we always do? And I was, again, a bit cautious, as I was in 2013. I didn't 100% agree with it, but I didn't really have a choice because I wanted the series, the cooking show, to be very slick. I didn't want it to be like a BuzzFeed type of, vloggy type. I wanted it to be quite professional.
Very polished.
Yeah, but it's worked out really, really well.
I think a huge part of it is like you have a great relationship with the camera. So did you train as a presenter, Fizah, or was it just something that came naturally to you?
That's naturally, right?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of both. So I got into journalism because I liked storytelling and storytelling to camera. And then during my career, obviously had some presenting training as well. So it was a bit of both. But I guess like with the smartphone, it is just like more of a personal connection anyway. It's almost like I'm talking to Nassr when I'm doing it, because it's just a little thing that's between me and him, really.
How do you guys manage the dynamic between the production process and you both having creative ideas? Like, who's the boss?
Devil's advocate there, Glen.
I'm pretty chilled out, to be honest. I'm just kind of, when I need to be, I'll just be like, do you know what? You're running the show. I'll just do the filming, and I'll suggest, okay, let's have a shot here, let's have a shot there, let's have this type of shot. Maybe you should say this. I kind of direct her a little bit, but she's basically her own boss most of the time. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you said it then, and not me.
No, I mean, it's because I'm pretty chilled out.
Yeah, he is very chilled out, and I'm quite the opposite. And also, I think I visualize what I want to see. So I envision the end product, and I like to go like that way. I'll improvise and be spontaneous, and of course I ask you for feedback and ask you to jump in and whatnot. But I'm very, very, very creative in my mind and on paper, and that's how I like it to end up in the end. So it works though, because even though he's chilled out and I'm like super stressed, it's like a nice balance.
Yin and yang.
Exactly, yeah.
Also, because she's the one who's editing, she kind of has an idea in mind of what sort of shots she wants and whatnot. She kind of communicates that to me. So what I do is I'd put the rough cut out. I'd just edit the rough cut for her, and then I'll just pass it on to her, and that kind of speeds up our workflow, because then she knows exactly where she needs to add voiceover and other effects and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it works, and that's how we get along.
One question, the workflow side of things, like the production values, as I say, are exceptionally high. Like, it was very, very slickly produced. So well done on both of that. What gear do you use? I don't want to go all techie, but in a nutshell, give me the bullet points. What do you use? So we know it's still a Samsung phone, I presume.
Yeah. So I mean, the wicked thing with the Note 10, I've got a Note 10 Plus,
right?
And what it has on it is a directional microphone. I don't exactly know how it works, but wherever you've kind of focused or wherever you've zoomed in, it amplifies the sound coming from that direction. And I don't know if it's a gimmick or not, but I mean, the sound quality is pretty decent. We've not used any external microphone for this.
Interesting.
So all the sound you're hearing is just from the phone itself. Apart from her voiceovers, we've got a podcast set up, so we kind of record on some professional mics for the VO.
And then a tiny tripod.
And I've got a tiny tripod. What's it called? I think it's the Gorilla. Is it the Gorilla tripod?
A little Gorilla Pod.
Yes.
A little Gorilla Pod, which I bought about a year and a half ago, and it's coming in handy now.
Going forward, like, what's your vision? What's your plan? What do you want to achieve with it? Like, if you were to say, let's look down a year down the line, you've now, generated or created maybe 20 or 30 individual recipes. Like, is there a bigger plan? Are you hoping it'll lead to maybe a live TV show, or what are you thinking?
I would love that. I mean, yes, that is sort of the plan. It is to go somewhere, whether that's becoming quite a popular cooking channel on IGTV, and it's on YouTube, so that'll on YouTube, because I think it has got the potential to become quite great. It's just the algorithms for someone new on YouTube and IGTV, you don't really garner that much of an audience straight away. But definitely, I hope it does get the justice that it deserves, and that is to become quite big, because it's smartphone content. I don't think there is another cooking show that's quite as quirky or fun that's filmed in general or filmed on smartphones on YouTube or IGTV.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully see. I mean, it'd be nice if we can make regular weekly content for Fizah's Bangin recipes, and in a year, hopefully sooner rather than later, maybe 6 to 12 months, is big enough. It's big enough to be viewed as a significant cooking show, or a significant part of the food culture.
Do you want to mention the YouTube channel and the Instagram channels?
Yes. So on Instagram, it's Fizah Tahir. So that's FIZAH TAHIR. That's my page on Instagram, and IGTV is my cooking series, which is Fizah's Bangin Recipes. And on YouTube, it's Fizah's Bangin Recipes. And the Bangin is the northern Bangin without the G at the end.
Okay, excellent. Very good. But anyway, guys, it's been a real pleasure chatting to the two of you. Thanks so much for giving up the time today. And I really hope to wish you the really, really best of success with the project. So, Courtney, how are things going with the film project?
Well, things are going pretty well. I'm acquiring more gear every day. I've pretty much finished the script or the script meant as much as I can at the moment. But right now it's just about me acquiring the gear that I need to kind of get the job done when comes time. So one of the things that I'm actually pretty excited about receiving in the mail the other day was the X-Rite color checker, the passport video color checker. And it's I think this is one of the things that Richard Lackey kind of swears by, right?
Yeah, it is actually. I remember him talking about it explicitly during the summit, to be honest. We must try and get him on the show, actually. It'd be interesting
Absolutely.
to pick his brain.
Absolutely.
So for the newbies, and secretly me, how exactly do you use that? Is it you basically hold it up in front of the camera at the start of every shot, or how does that work?
Yeah. So basically, what the color checker is it has all these different swatches of color on them, and it also has a gray card, a focus card, a black middle gray and white. And so what you do is you shoot. Right as you're getting ready to shoot a new scene or new lighting setup, you roll a little bit of footage so that when you go into post-production and when you're going into do your color correction, you can take samples of these things so you can balance your color. It just makes your job really easy when you're doing your color correction, and then it'll make your job easier when you're doing your color grade.
All right, so it's a much more advanced version of the old white sheet in front of the face, basically.
Right. You can still do that, if you don't want to get this, because this is, I want to say a bit pricey, around $100, but,
wow.
But it is essential kit, for moving forward. But you could just as easily, in terms of like doing a white balance, do that with a white sheet of paper or sheet or, a white t-shirt or whatever you have.
And tell me, at this stage, do you have a kind of a notional or aspirational timeline for when you're hoping to try and get into production? I mean, the COVID restrictions are being eased almost globally, I think, at this stage. Does that make the project kind of fall back onto some sort of a predictable timeline now?
Yeah, so I will say that it's a time-ish. So I'm thinking of August-ish of shooting. So, probably somewhere in the middle of August. I'm hoping, and where the COVID spikes are, they're kind of all over the place, here in the States still, unfortunately. So right now where I'm at in Washington State, we've leveled off, and I'm just hoping that it does not go back up. So if it does not go back up, if it's leveled off and stays where it is for the next 4 to 6 weeks, then I'll be looking to shoot somewhere around then.
Amazing. I mean, that's well within the timeline of the podcast, in the sense that probably we're looking at 4 to 5 weeks out potentially. So look forward to updates as things start to kind of, hopefully fall into place as we go forward. I'm going to get another ass kick, and I know I am, for saying that it's been another week of me doing not very much in my project, to be perfectly honest. Although I did take your lead. Wait, no,
this microphone, Glenn.
I did take your lead from last week. The 1% is better than nothing. So I have started to dig into the archive of gear that's been sitting in the attic for several years at this stage. I was quite surprised there was stuff up there that I'd even forgotten about. So I think I have my lights. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I now have 3 gimbals to choose from, though I had not intended to use gimbals at all. But that's something, right? So I have DJI, and there's Feotech one here sitting on the desk. I found a mirrorless camera that I'd forgotten I even owned, which is a bit alarming. Clearly, I'm a very bad hoarder. But yeah, I found 2 nice flat panel lights that I'd forgotten I had as well. So, I mean, it's coming together. Unlike you, I have my whole audio solution sorted because I have multiples of the Rode Wireless Go units, 3 of them now, actually. So I'm not too worried about all that. What I need to do is just itemize it all and decide exactly what scenes are going to be assigned. But I really need to put more energy into the script. Right. But at least I did something.
That's good.
So
I'm proud
there
of
is,
you.
yeah, there is that. See, I'm being motivated by you. See, there you go. So take credit on that one. I did find it interesting during the week. I saw a tweet, actually. I don't know, was it Mark Settle from BBC, or who was it that I saw on Twitter talking about a new app from the company who brought out the photography application Focus. So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but on iOS, Focus, I think it runs on the higher end iPhones and the more recent powerful ones. But it allows you to basically do a very advanced version of portrait mode. So you can do shallow depth of field effectively. You can even focus after the fact, which is the thing when I show that in workshops is the bit that most people have their mind blown by. So you can take a picture and then focus in the foreground or background afterwards. So it's pretty powerful. But they've just released a live version. In other words, it's a video version. I have to be brutally honest and say I've had good results from the Focus Photography app, but my initial testing of the Focus Live app has been meh. Yeah, you can see the potential.
Is it kind of focused towards like Instagrammers, or what do you think the focus is of the app?
Well, that's a really good question, because if you think about it, within Instagram, there's already a filter that lets you do bokeh effect or shallow depth of field in the same way that Zoom, for instance, will use facial recognition technology to do a virtual background. And I really like the Focus app. Let me say that again. But the video app, I kind of feel it doesn't feel a huge improvement over the one that comes for free in Instagram. This is a paid app. So I'll watch with interest. I think it might have been, actually, I'm just checking notes. It was Jack Hollingsworth that I saw actually tweeting about it initially. Jack is an amazing photographer. If you've never heard him, I'd love to get him on the show, because I think, in the broadest gamut of what mobile content creation is, I definitely think we should have a spot for photography as well. Absolutely. And there's some amazing people in that space. But yeah, so it was Jack.
All mobile creators, bring them on.
Exactly. You can make it with a mobile. We want to hear about it. That's it. Exactly. Yeah. So that was one app that I saw that I was kind of intrigued by, but so far not overwhelmed with the results. But, look, I will put the caveat in and say I might have been using it wrong, to be perfectly honest, Well,
operator errors, is 9 times out of 10, for me in particular, I was just like, this thing sucks. Well, wait, no, I suck.
I'll see examples from other people and realize actually, all right, yeah. So I'll eat humble pie and say I've just played with it, and I'm interested to see where other people find its uses. But yeah, that's it. I haven't really haven't got any new gear this week for a change. My wife is getting so sick of Amazon people delivering to the door at this stage. It's not even funny, but hey, you must know what that feels like.
Oh, well, we're on first name basis with our UPS driver. So,
I'm not there yet now. Okay, then. Anyway, that's it for this week's show. We'll be back again next Friday with another Mobile Creator podcast. If in the interim you want to connect with us, remember, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, and you can, of course, listen to us on a whole plethora of different audio podcast streaming sites, all via Anchor. And of course, you can just visit at themobilecreatorpodcast.com if you want to look at listen back to previous shows. And I'll be linking to a couple of blogs that Courtney has done over the last couple of days about some of his filmmaking kit and gear and stuff that we spoke about over the last couple of episodes as well. So lots of resources to start to tap into. But that's it from us for this week. So until next week, bye for now.
Bye.
Mobile Creator Podcast is sponsored by Filmic Pro and LumaTouch.